Coming up on Network Africa. Armed gunmen kill 6 members of a paramilitary police unit in an ambush in northern Burkina Faso. Ethiopia to free over 7,000 prisoners in commemoration of the country's new year. Plus, Rwanda reaches a deal with the UN Refugee Agency and the African Union to host hundreds of African migrants currently being held in Libya. Hello and a warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin today in Burkina Faso, where armed gunmen have killed 6 members of a paramilitary police unit in an ambush in Djibo town in Soum province. Reports say at least 100 suspected militants took part in the attack on the officers. The latest incident comes after 29 civilians were killed in 2 attacks on Sunday in the northern province of San Matenga. Another attack on the same day wounded 4 soldiers in Yatenga province. The authorities have been struggling to contain an Islamist militancy in the north and east of the country near its borders with Mali and Niger. Over 7,000 prisoners will be freed in Ethiopia to mark the country's new year, which will be celebrated on Thursday. Attorney General Birhanu Segei says he is granting pardons to 1,087 inmates from Kaliti, Ziwe and Shewarobit prisons. Meanwhile, the authorities in 2 other states, Amara and Southern Nations, Nationalities and Peoples Region, are freeing a total of 6,695 detainees. It is not uncommon for prisoners to be released as part of events to mark the new year. However, Ethiopia is also keen to show reforms in the prison sector. The Horn of Africa nation follows a calendar that is about 7 years behind the Gregorian calendar used in much of the rest of the world. And on Thursday, it will be the start of 2012 for Ethiopians. Meanwhile, a former Ethiopian torture center is open to the public for 3 days as part of the government's push towards new democratic freedoms. Former inmates now tour the detention center, remembering the times of torture and fear.
Blogger Befeqadu Hailu's eyes filled with tears as he stood on the spot where he had watched a guard attack a friend in Mekalawi Detention Center, a name long synonymous with torture and fear. But Befeqadu visits the former police station as a tourist, not an inmate, after the Ethiopian government opened the building to the public. The notorious detention and interrogation center in Addis Ababa, where thousands of political prisoners languished, was closed last year after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed took office, pledging to end the rights abuses, which he denounced as acts of state terrorism.
I always remember when the policemen came in to take me, I hear the voice of the handcuffs. So when they come in, you know they are going to take you, so your heart starts to pump. You get scared, and then you just give your hands to be handcuffed and be taken to the torture rooms. I don't call them interrogation rooms because all they do was torture, and then they force you to confess self-incriminating things.
When Befeqadu entered the small room where he was detained, at times with more than 20 other prisoners, he was angry to see the walls freshly covered with yellow paint, erasing the writing he and others had scrawled.
So this is Siberia, as it is called by the prisoners. It used to be very dark because these openings that allow light to enter now, they were not there. It was blocked, and there was only a small bulb right there from outside. So the only source of light in the rooms was those bulbs, and it is usually cold and dark.
The facility was used by successive governments, including the military dictatorship of Mengistu Haile Mariam, as a site to detain people under investigation for political crimes. Human rights advocates are calling on the Ethiopian government to do more to deal with the country's abusive past. Though Makalawi is shot, activists say some people are currently being detained under the anti-terrorism law.
Let's get more on this story from an African affairs analyst, Dr. Okwi Okpala. Thanks for joining us on the program. So what would you say the significance of Ethiopia freeing over 7,000 prisoners to mark the country's new year, which will be celebrated on Thursday?
Well, I think it's a very significant development. It's a signal that the government wants to have a new beginning, to give opportunity to everybody to become a productive and responsible citizen of the country. By releasing those prisoners, I think, and then, of course, that's the first step. It's not the ultimate step, but it's a very important first step that signifies the intention of government to involve everybody, to give everybody opportunity to have a new beginning, to clear all the past, and then have a new beginning.
Yeah, as we've just seen in that report, the government recently turned a notorious torture chamber, the Makelawi Detention Center, in the capital, Addis Ababa, into a museum. Could this move in any way be counterproductive? What if inmates are angry about this, especially those who feel they were unfairly tortured?
It's a very important development. However, it's not there's a lot to be done. To turn the center into a museum is that they believe, that the government believes that there is something positive about every citizen. However, there is need also to make sure that the citizens are engaged in productive ventures, the economy is good, and there will be inclusion of everybody in the agenda, development agenda of the new government. That is a signal that government believes that everybody has something to contribute, including those who are inmates of that. Yeah.
Well, apart from freeing these inmates, what else can the government do to rehabilitate and reintegrate them back into the society?
The government needs to embark on an empowerment program. There will be reorganization. There will be need to give them what to do, to make sure that they empower them, to give them new skills, so that when they get into the society, they will really be well absorbed in society and they can engage in productive ventures. To just go to the museum and push them back into the population may actually be negative if they are not rehabilitated, if they are not, if there is no engagement for them, that will make them occupy them and make sure that their energies are turned into productive, into good production rather than engaging in crime or something.
All right, African Affairs analyst Dr. Okwi Okpala, thanks for sharing your thoughts and analysis with us. Away from Ethiopia, a deal for Rwanda to host hundreds of African migrants currently being held in Libya has been signed by the Rwandan government, the UN Refugee Agency and the African Union. A joint statement from the three parties say a first group of 500 people, predominantly from the Horn of Africa, will be evacuated, including children and youth at risk. It adds that the evacuation flights for those willing to go to Rwanda are expected to begin in the coming weeks.
This morning in Addis Ababa, UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, with the government of Rwanda and the African Union, we have signed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, to set up a transit mechanism for evacuating refugees out of Libya. Under this agreement, the government of Rwanda will receive and provide protection to refugees and asylum seekers who are currently being held in detention centers in Libya. The first group is supposed to first group of 500. So this is not the total number. This is the first group of 500, which will be evacuated out of Libya to Rwanda. And in terms of some of the nationalities, I understand this includes refugees from Eritrea, Somalia, and Sudan.
Meanwhile, a new digital platform is transforming healthcare in Rwanda. The application is called Babylon, a healthcare service that provides patients with information, clinical records, prescriptions, and telephone consultations with a physician through a mobile smartphone.
Sostene Yuringie has been unwell for a while. Too weak to make the journey to the nearest healthcare center, he's decided to try Babylon, a mobile phone app that offers virtual medical services to Rwandans.
I'm not feeling well and wanted a doctor's consultation. I'm having back and headaches, and I'm also shaking.
The process is relatively simple. Using AI to assess symptoms, chatbot provides a diagnosis and passes the data on to a doctor. Patients then dial a number and request a video consultation with a doctor. After making a payment, the appointment is confirmed via SMS.
Starting from 2016, where we used to have 5 consultations a day, now we're having on average between 2,500 and 3,000 consultations a day. This in itself shows traction.
Officials say apps like Babylon could be instrumental in countries like Rwanda, offering big savings in time and money for healthcare providers. But they are aware of its limitations too.
That we can't treat everything with our digital platform. You can't deliver a baby through digital means. You can't treat a patient that is heavily bleeding using digital means. So our scope is limited, but at the same time it's quite big.
Babylon, which has around 80 doctors and 106 nurses at its disposal, is free to download for anyone with a smartphone in Rwanda.
A recent report has shown that Africans generally have a good attitude towards vaccination. This is according to findings of a survey done in 40 African countries, which shows that 87% of Africans have a positive attitude towards vaccination. The findings were presented on the sidelines of the just concluded World Economic Forum on Africa in Cape Town, South Africa. Around 96% of those interviewed agreed that vaccines are important for children. There were slight concerns with the survey showing that 1 in 5 people interviewed have low trust in scientists and 1 in 5 believe science benefits a few people in their country.
Following the release of a report on the attitudes of Africans towards vaccines and science, experts say they're pleased with the confidence in vaccines. The findings are part of a survey by the Wellcome Global Monitor in 40 African countries.
I think on the good news side, there is a lot of positive perception about science and vaccines in particular, and their ability to change society, improve the quality of life.
Something like vaccines is one of the most cost-effective public health interventions that are out there, but I think we have to be conscious that complacency and fear are the greatest threats to public health. And so even though we see a level of trust in vaccines in Africa, we see the precursors of vaccine hesitancy in the mistrust in institutions. So you have to invest in vaccine confidence, as we do invest in when it comes to trust our relationships on a daily basis.
There's also some good news for malaria-prone countries, with the development of a malaria vaccine in the pipeline.
There's never been a vaccine against a parasitic infection of humans. Malaria will be the first one. It's the lead candidate for the malaria vaccine is far from perfect. It'll have an impact on societies across the continent. It won't be perfect. It won't be the last story of the malaria vaccine. I'm sure there will be second and third generation vaccines.
27% of Africans who participated in the survey seem to have little or no faith in public health institutions, including doctors and nurses.
The Wellcome Global Monitor report basically shows that Africans have a lot of trust in vaccines and science. But there is a big gap in terms of the trust of the institutions that deliver the science. So that you have this disconnect where Africans in general are very well predisposed. They understand that science can help change lives for the better, and in particular vaccines. But the institutions, they don't trust the institutions that deliver the science and these vaccines. So this is what we need to get at. The report doesn't go into the details about why this is the case, but it definitely shows that there is something wrong with the institutions.
Experts say building confidence in science and health institutions is important for disease control and the economic growth of the continent.
Still ahead, the United Nations warns that Somalia might be facing an impending food crisis as the country faces its poorest cereal harvest since the 2011 famine. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.